psychosocial harm or psychological harm actually become the new human error and is perpetuating the worker as the problem because of the system that we have in place, because some of our HR colleagues don't know what they don't know. And the other funny thing that I see in New Zealand is that safety reports into HR. And our chief people officers, sometimes they don't kind of understand that actually this expanded and more contemporary view of safety is actually about people, and they haven't taken time. So there's a really big opportunity for us to move into that area and help provide them some knowledge.
Talk about an emerging topic, well, that people think is emerging, but has been around for a long time. And we want to share with you the work that we have been doing around the HOP lens to understanding psychosocial risk.
Psychosocial risk, of course, sometimes people have called it mental health, or mental health and well-being risks as well. But the new term is psychosocial. And that's because it's more of a holistic understanding and gives a different conversation than just mental health and well-being. The definition is around exposure from a risk perspective. So we've kind of done away with likelihood and severity because we think that's more of an older school thinking about risk. Rather, we'd like to think about this as organisational exposure to a hazard of a psychosocial nature. We're wanting to talk more around organisational exposure and to think about that exposure. There's kind of three key words that you can also put around exposure in this place, which is frequency, severity, and duration. But they are exposure to hazards of a psychosocial nature that can result in that adverse impact on a worker's mental health. And going back into, well, what is a hazard? It's anything from organisational work and systems that can influence or impact a worker's mental health. So those are the kind of the swim lanes that we're using to define this particular area. And again, I think the definitions are going to go through evolution as we start this conversation. We think that organisations have actually been treating psychosocial risk in a safety one way. And that's because our HR colleagues have not known any different. So risk management needs to change because the controls that you have in this space are not the controls that we typically have in safety, are not the controls that work here. Instead of going through this, what we need to do is break this down a bit more. So from our perspective, we want to move to this. And these are the protection factors, right? So we've kind of got 5 areas here that we feel are really important to develop safe work. And so these particular things for us are about a continuous learning improvement cycle. They don't have to be in this order, right? They're all, again, this is a complex risk. So nothing is linear, nothing follows everything else, but these are areas that we kind of have identified, and I'm sure there are more.
Gold kiwi fruit. Okay, we have 3 types of kiwi fruit. Green, gold, and red. Anyone ever had a red kiwi fruit? Yeah. So green is like Moet, okay, champagne. Gold is Dom Perignon, and red is Cristal. Okay? So let's do a case study around seasonal workers in the kiwi fruit sector. The season for harvesting kiwi fruit lasts 10 weeks. Can you guys buy kiwi fruit all year round? Yeah. So, shock horror, okay, it's not fresh, okay, but for those that are concerned, we wrap them up in blankets and put them into incubators and put them to sleep until they get to you, okay, so they're well catered for. And during the season, that industry goes from 4,000 people to 35,000 people for 10 weeks. Just want to give you some context. From 4,000 to 35,000 people for a 10-week period. And 90% of those people are from our Pacific countries where English is a second language. And in that 10-week period, they will earn 1 year's worth of income for their village. And they are paid on a pick rate with a minimum hourly rate. We don't do slave labour. Just want to give some context. Our minimum hourly rate in our country is $22 an hour. Okay, that's Kiwi pesos, for those that want to convert. Okay, so they either get a pick rate, but they're guaranteed a minimum hourly rate of $22. And it's fair to say their village is dependent totally on that work. And they send their fittest and their strongest people to do this work. And those people come in, they fly out, and there is zero prospect of any future in our country. Their visa is for that only. There is no prospect of any method of immigration. Is that risky? Can you guys taste some risk in the kiwi fruit? Yep. Is it fair to say that these people are more likely to work as many hours as they can? That they feel obligated to support their village? If they come from these strong cultures, all the signals are there of not only physical harm, but mental harm. Because they're being brought from an environment in a total foreign country with different customs and different ways and different languages. That must surely create a huge amount of uncertainty for them. So here's our approach. The organisation creates their psychosocial risk profile of the work. There is no risk assessment. I'm sorry to disappoint the people in the room. There's no 5x5 matrix. There's no colour. There's no number. Okay. They look at the work that people do across these 4 components. And they map that work across these 4 elements. And we're going to explore those because I think it's really interesting. Let's start with task factors. So they look at the work. They're obviously engaging with the people that do the work using the 4 Ds. And those 4 Ds will give them insights. So if we look at this for an example, we've got a scale here. One end is harming. The other end is protecting. Comfortable with that? So the fact that the job they're doing for 10 weeks, how they do that job, the fact that they are acting as a robot in that work, means that it is an unacceptable workload. They are doing highly repetitive tasks, and those tasks are very unchallenging. Sound good? You are acting as a robot. Do humans perform well as robots? No. Okay? So you can see here that this risk profile is running a bit like a river. It's ebbing and flowing. If we then looked at those factors from an individual perspective, the way this organisation has designed the work, they have designed it so that the work has meaning and purpose. because those people are here on a social contract to support their village. And they have designed it to really focus on that social contract. So the kiwi fruit sector builds these villages where the workers stay for 10 weeks, and that village resembles their own village. So for safety people, if their village, or the country they came from, used open fire pits to cook, that village had open fire pits to cook. Okay? Yes, safety people, there were some fire extinguishers and fire blankets. Okay? But giving them an electric stove is more dangerous because that's not what they are used to. If you looked at that, if you compared, can you see how they're balancing the left and the right? So they know that the stuff on the left they can't change. So if we go back to that previous one, if we know we can't change the task being a robot, we can't change that job unless we actually get robots to do the kiwi fruit. We can't change the fact that they're working like a robot for 10 weeks. But we can balance that by giving the work meaning to them. Explored the organisational factors. You can see that they've done a lot of things in the work design that provides much more on the right side of the equation around leadership, around communication, around encouragement, around balancing effort and reward, treating people fairly, and providing fair pay versus total lack of job security. And then there's the social factors as well. So if you looked at those four things, you would see this happening. And what you're trying to do is you're basically looking for balance. So if I can't change this, what can I do somewhere else to bring it to this side?